We good to go?
Let's go.
So we're finally doing this.
Okay. So, first episode. Here we are.
Here we are.
After what? 2 months of very honest and diligent attempts.
A lot of learning experience.
Of course.
Yeah. You know what? When I first started this channel, I didn't even think that I would need an intro until we were told that it's best to have a
Intro
and we
before you start with the new version.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah. Thank you for assisting and supporting. Really
Pleasure.
needed it.
If someone told me I'll be doing a podcast 2 years ago, I'd be like, yeah, sure. What else?
No, you know what? Even me, I never thought I'd be doing this. So I'll tell you what my why is, why I wanted to do this. So when this is one of the positives that came out of the pandemic. The pandemic hit, and then you saw everybody, almost everyone, becoming a content creator in a way. So even the teachers had to do online lessons, and I was working with some children that were elite athletes, and we needed to give them some resources about fitness and about how to work with. For the ones who don't know what I do, I'm a sports trainer and a performance coach. So I work with children beginning from 18 months, which is parent participation, or at least it was before the pandemic. Right now, it's from the ages of 3 upward. And when I was working with these children, they were elite athletes of various schools. And this school in particular had a program that we need to give them some kind of resource. And then I thought, I'm anyways putting my time and effort into it. So why not just put it out there? And I started a YouTube channel. And at that time it seemed like, okay, it's pretty simple. But then as and when I started posting videos, I got a lot of feedback from a lot of people, and they wanted to see better quality. They wanted me to put my best foot out there. So a lot of friends and well wishers, they actually told me, why don't you do it in a certain way, which is far better in quality at least. So yeah, then I thought, okay, yes, why not? Let's just invest in.
Right.
And I started learning more about. And speaking of learning more, even I got to learn a lot from online videos. I got a lot to learn from podcasts, and all of that gave me a lot of information in order to improve myself. And I was like, you know what? This is a very good platform to put information out there. I'm not really certain if you know, but I always wanted to get into teaching. And when I say teaching, I don't really mean PE, but also teaching a subject. And the group that I like to work with is the early years. But it was not really possible for me. But I am happy what I'm doing right now. And I thought, yes, the internet is a perfect place to put information out there.
Right.
When teachers do, why not
Of course.
us as well? So, then when I started asking people for more information on how exactly we start this, that's when I bumped into you. And I know for a fact that you have a lot of experience in podcasts, at least listening to.
I have a lot of experience listening to
Listening to
podcasts. That's the
podcasts.
right way to say it.
Listening to podcasts.
I've been particularly fond of the podcast format, at least for the past 6 to 7 years. So I used to be a very avid reader, but once work schedules got more, you could say, time consuming, you don't have the time to read as much as you do earlier. So eventually I moved on to the podcast format because I realized unlike reading, you don't have to commit 100% of your time to learning when it comes to podcasts as opposed to reading. So if you have to read a book, you have to 100% sit down and read, concentrate. But when it comes to podcasts, you could find a topic that you're curious about, and then you could just play it in the background. You could drive, you could do your other work that needs your hands and legs, you could say, and then listen in the background and still learn. So podcasts eventually became my favorite form of media, you could say. So subconsciously, I don't know, maybe I've been preparing for this, but the thought did passed my mind that maybe one day I should do something on my own in terms of podcast. But yeah, when you called me the other day asking about starting a podcast, and I know I went on for about an hour without a break. That's the point I realized, okay, maybe this is the right time. Why don't we start something by ourselves? So I've been partial to or fond of one particular podcast called the Joe Rogan Experience. I think you're familiar
Yes,
with the podcast.
of course.
So I found that podcast very fascinating. So, of course, unlike other people, Joe Rogan was already a celebrity when he started the podcast, but he started off with not many viewers or subscribers. Started off free on YouTube. Now he's on Spotify with one of the biggest deals ever in the podcast industry. But what's fascinating about that, he started off in his basement with a friend, talking about random stuff just by themselves. Eventually, the podcast grew into something that not just every celebrity or every entrepreneur, every business person used to come on there to put out their views on the internet, but even grew to the point where presidential candidates wanted to have their time on the podcast to put their views out there. So, not that I'm interested in going in that direction, but you could see how one particular podcast became so influential, and you can see that there is a need or a hunger in the general public to listening to unobstructed and you could say unbiased to an extent views. When I say unbiased, I mean unbiased by any other corporate interest. Of course, each person will have their own biases.
Yes, of course.
We all do.
Yes.
But when you watch the JRE, he's shooting off the hip. He's talking whatever he wants to talk. There is no sponsor sitting on his neck saying, you have to toe this line. You have to basically say what I want you to say. And the other thing that makes that podcast very, very successful, in my opinion, is the man is generally curious. He wants to learn. So
That's for us also, isn't it?
that's similar for us as well. That's why one, I found that podcast very interesting in the beginning. Number two, eventually I had the thought that maybe we could do this ourselves rather than, of course, we could still do both. Like they say, you can chew gum and walk at the same time. But here's the thing. I eventually started thinking maybe instead of just listening to Joe Rogan speaking to interesting people, maybe we could start a similar format by ourselves and meet and speak to interesting people by ourselves.
It's true. Actually, I'd like to add on to that. When I wanted to put out information out there, especially when it came to the pandemic and the industry that I'm in, it is more into health and fitness. But if you go to see the health and fitness, the resources on the internet is a lot. I also wanted to give something back in a way, or give out information that would actually benefit students. Yes, the curriculum that we are learning right now, how relevant it is to the actual corporate that's going on. Let it be it here in the UAE, be it back home, or where we're from Mangalore. So something that could be beneficial for people worldwide. And there are a lot of people over here in the UAE with the rich experience. And the amount of content that you can get from them, the amount of information that you can get from them, they share their experiences and they're all based here. It's more relevant to the people who are listening out here. So I work with a lot of children, their parents, they all reside over here. So when you give out information that's from the UAE to the people of the UAE, it makes more sense. It's like, it's more relatable compared to. So,
Of course. So, yeah, on the same lines, we've said this before to each other when we had a conversation. Our values align quite well with each other. However, there are certain subtle differences. To be very honest, my interests are more personal and more selfish. I get it. I'm totally with you on that you need to put certain content out there that helps people. Definitely, yes.
I know where you're going with this, but I also want to finish that it's not
Sure.
only for, even I have self-interest. Otherwise, I wouldn't really be encouraged to do this. That is me being completely transparent. Because just like you, even I'm very, very curious. I'd love to meet a lot of people from different walks of life, learn from them, and in the bargain also give out that information.
Of course. I think it was one of Carl Sagan's quotes where he said, everyone you meet knows something that you don't. So for me, one of the main reasons to do this podcast is I would like to meet very interesting people, people that you can learn from, could be from any walk of life, just to pick their brains on certain topics. That's about it. And of course, in the same process, if you can put that content out there where other people could learn and benefit from that as well, works well for everyone.
And I also got to mention this for everybody listening. This we also spoke when a few days earlier, that our content needn't necessarily go one way. We may bring on people who disagree with us.
I would say that is the only way to go about it. If I agree with you on each and every topic, what do we have to talk about?
Exactly. Exactly.
I don't have much interest in talking to people who agree with me on mostly everything. Not that I don't, but there's not much to talk about.
There's not much to learn about as well.
Not much to learn about either. If there is someone who disagrees with me on a particular position I have on anything, any particular topic, then I'm interested to learn why exactly they think that way. So I'm more interested in those conversations than just bringing on people who agree all the time.
What are the topics that you are interested in? I mean, there's a lot I know, but at the top of your head, what are the topics that you are interested in?
Off the top of my head, you kind of sprung this on me out of nowhere. One of the things that I'd be really interested to learn more about is related to your field of personal training. I would like to pick a brain of someone who's an expert in calisthenics.
Okay.
It's a very advanced version. If you look at any of the gymnasts who do the ring movements or the movements on the bars, you can see they're pretty developed. And basically, the reason why I got interested in this is I used to do bodyweight movements for the earlier part of my workout experience. So I started off working out around at the age of 15. From the age of 15 to 18, I didn't lift much weights, but I used to do like 100 push-ups a day. So that used to be my base. And after that, I didn't do much calisthenics. I started lifting weights. But now, at the age of 36, I think I'm a bit on the heavier side. I would like to go back to the roots where you don't have to rely on weights and get your body movement right and get your body capable enough to move its own weight efficiently rather than just go into the gym and throw around heavy weights. What topics would you be interested in that you would like to talk about?
Well, I'd like to learn about people who spent a lot of their time over here in the UAE, gone through a certain process and are what they are because of their experience. Some of them who have made it, some of them who are on the verge of making it. And I would also like to listen to stories that they tried and they couldn't go ahead, but they're open to, or they're being brave enough to share something like that way. I'd like to know more about the field that you're interested in as well, about astronomy, about the fossils.
Astronomy, paleontology.
Yes.
Wildlife.
Yes. Like to know
There's
more
a few
about
things we can talk about.
I also am very interested in promoting health and also talk about mental health, which is a very hot
Very
topic right
interesting.
now.
Yes.
Since I work with a lot of teenagers also, they go through a completely different process. They're going through a lot of change, physical change. They're going through a lot of, you know, stresses. There's a whole lot of thing to be being a teenager right now, especially with the social media and the peer pressure. Not just for the teenagers, but for their parents as well. So there's a lot of things happening. So I would like to address these issues, or maybe talk about that issue, talk about the solution as well, what can be done.
On similar lines, I would also be interested in speaking to an expert on managing stress. So
When you say stress, is it work related, or it could be stress in general, and then also speak about various
from the perspective of someone working here in the UAE,
as an expat,
as an expat, see,
right?
a very general example.
Mm-hmm.
You work for 8 hours. Some of or most of us commute for at least 2.5 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good 10, 11 hours of stress on your body.
Yes.
After that, you have responsibilities at home.
Mm-hmm.
You barely get 7 or 6 hours of sleep. I don't think you can say that's good on the body or on the mind.
Right.
So is there some way we can mitigate all the damage that we're putting on our bodies, to be very frank?
Mm-hmm.
Because sleeping less than 8 hours, taking that much stress mentally and physically, that is going to take its toll over the years.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to speak to an expert regarding that as well.
Right. We have a whole lot of topic that we can talk about, not necessarily one particular subject, but a very broad one. When we decided to do the podcast, I wanted a maximum of 15 minutes. And I was like, you know what, sometimes a 2 minute or 3 minute video would do. I was like, you know what, let's just maximum cap it to 15 minutes. But that is not where you're leaning into.
This is more of my influence, I would say. See, this is where I'm coming from on this. Okay, you can kind of lean towards the demographic that has less attention span. You can go that way. If you look at the Instagram reels, if you look at TikTok, it's all 10 seconds, quick, fast. Nobody has the time. Right. I don't buy that. There's nothing interesting or worth value that you can learn in 10 seconds. I personally don't fall in that particular segment. I prefer long form conversations, interviews, podcasts to watch. So this is again more of a personal self-interest that I want to talk to people on a longer duration. Who's a good example of someone you'd like to learn more about? Give me a random example.
A random example. Who I'd like to learn about?
Athlete, sports person, expert on anything.
I'd like to learn more about Warren Buffett.
So if someone brought Warren Buffett on their show and said, okay, give me all your expertise on topic X or Y, investment or whatever, in 30 seconds. Do you think that is something that can be condensed into 30 seconds? Or rather than getting the condensed version, are you getting the wrong version if it is condensed to 30 seconds? What do you think it is?
Well, I agree with you. I do agree with you. I prefer to know more. However, I also should tell you, like, just like the point that you mentioned, if you're working a minimum of 8 hours and then you're also commuting 2 hours, where do you have the time?
That's where the audio version of the podcast comes in. So you don't really need to sit in front of the screen and watch this for 45 minutes or an hour. So you could be commuting, you could be driving to work, you could be doing anything, you could be cooking. And you can have this running in the background and still get to learn. So for example, if someone brought, again, Warren Buffett on the program and said, here's your 30 seconds, explain a particular concept, I think that would be a disservice to the experience of the gentleman and his life experience. I would rather like to learn about the person over a longer period of time where they have the comfort of speaking as themselves and taking us through their experiences at their convenience, rather than giving them like 30 seconds, 2 minutes, and say, okay, here you have 2 minutes, go on.
So if I'm to understand you, so you're saying the long form of interview would give an unfiltered, more personal kind
Of course.
information. Okay.
If you got an opportunity to talk about someone you admire, someone you're interested in, there is no way you're sitting down and having a conversation just for 15 minutes. It could go on for 45 minutes, it could go on for an hour. So now, the usual challenge that is thrown up to a podcast like this is people don't have the time
Right.
to sit down and watch for an hour. Okay, they don't have to. They can watch like however long they have the time for. But there is a demographic that has the interest to watch for much longer.
Right.
So that is part of the demographic that we are targeting. And whoever has a shorter attention span, we can have shorter content from them.
You said if no one has the time to watch a long form of video, they can do audio. But why are we doing a video podcast then? I mean,
Yeah.
I know the answer why, but
We are doing something for everyone. So if you don't have the time to sit in front of a screen, you have the audio. But if you actually like to look at all the body language and all the physical cues that come in when you're talking about a particular conversation, that's a bigger picture. If you want that, then there's a video podcast. You get to see everything that's going on in the conversation, because the physical cues are half the conversation. You can get a lot out of a audio podcast, but not as much as a video podcast. My vision of this is basically, when you do a video podcast, the audience, the viewer, should not feel like this is something that is very choreographed, very planned and filtered. It should be a normal conversation. You should be talking to your guest as if there's no cameras in the room. And the audience should feel like they're in the room with you.
right.
So that is basically the quality that I'm aiming at.
And more like a discussion based.
Yeah, more like a casual conversation on it. It could be anything.
Right.
What else?
I don't think we've told for how long I've known you.
Apart from the few people that know the both of us, for the rest, we've known each other for half our lives.
Yes.
So I know you since I was 18.
18. That's another why that we are doing this for. I mean, at least for me, I'd love to reach out to the Carlton in college.
So personally speaking, the intention to start this podcast, at least for me, is back home. You don't really get to meet and speak and learn about different cultures as much as you get to do over here. Of course, you get to meet a lot of cultures that are in India, which is a lot. But here you get to speak to and interact with a lot of different cultures from all over the world.
Yeah, 120 nationalities.
Right. So
At least.
that would be an avenue that I would love to explore.
Yeah, to get their perspective as well, isn't it?
Get their
Yeah.
perspective from different cultures, different places in the world. Yes.
And that is why we are doing Million Opinions. In order to learn ourselves, give out information and share experiences, and with the hope to entertain.
Of course.